The Veth Dominion had been conquering worlds for over 300 years. They had taken 17 star systems and crushed every species that stood in their way. Their warriors were tall, strong, and feared across the galaxy. No one had ever defeated them in open battle. Commander Zyrax sat in his war room aboard the flagship Eternal Conquest, studying the holographic maps that floated before him. His four eyes scanned the data with cold calculation. The scouts had found something interesting. A small human outpost on a frozen moon orbiting a planet called Kepler 442b. The humans called it Site Theta-7. The scout reports were clear. 32 human life signs. A few small buildings. No warships anywhere nearby. The nearest human fleet was 3 light years away. It would take them days to respond to any distress call. Zyrax clicked his mandibles in amusement. Humans were such fragile creatures. Soft skin, weak bones, short lives. They had only been traveling among the stars for 2 centuries. The Veth had been doing it for thousands of years. This outpost would fall within hours, and it would give the Dominion a perfect foothold into human-controlled space. He turned to his subordinate, Sub-Commander Kreth. Prepare a landing force. 200 shock troopers should be more than enough for this task. Kreth bowed his massive head. It will be done, Commander. The humans will learn to fear the Dominion. Far below on the frozen moon, Captain Nate Holloway stood at the observation window of Site Theta-7. He was a man of 43 years, with gray starting to show at his temples and scars that told stories he never spoke about. His blue eyes watched the endless ice storms that swept across the barren landscape outside. The moon was a harsh place. Temperatures dropped to -100 degrees at night. The air was thin and toxic. Nothing lived here except the 32 men and women who called this frozen rock home. Lieutenant Grace Dunn walked up behind him. She was younger than Nate, maybe 35, with short brown hair and a no-nonsense attitude. She had served with him for 8 years, through missions that would give most people nightmares. "Sir, we have a problem," she said, holding up a tablet. Nate turned slowly. His face showed no emotion. "What kind of problem?" "Unidentified signatures entering the system. 12 vessels. Configuration is unknown, but they match the profile we were briefed on 18 months ago." Nate nodded. This was the moment they had been waiting for. The moment they had trained for. The reason they were here on this God's forsaken moon in the middle of nowhere. "Sound general quarters," he said calmly. "No alarms. Silent protocol. Get me Sergeant Cole Bishop." Grace moved quickly to carry out his orders. Within minutes, the base came alive with quiet activity. Men and women emerged from their quarters and moved to their assigned positions. There was no panic, no shouting, no confusion. Everyone knew exactly what to do. Because Site Theta-7 was not what it appeared to be. The official record said it was a research station, studying the geological formations of the moon. The official records lead. Site Theta-7 was home to Spectre Company, the most elite special operations unit in the entire United Earth Command. Every single person on this base was a killer. They had been selected from thousands of candidates, trained for years in the most brutal conditions imaginable, and then sent here to wait. Wait for the enemy that Earth's intelligence services knew was coming. Sergeant Cole Bishop arrived at the command center 2 minutes later. He was a tall man with a thin build and steady hands. He had been a sniper for 15 years and had more confirmed kills than anyone else in the service. His spotter, Corporal Amy Dawson, followed close behind him. "Sir," Cole said with a nod. "The guests are arriving," Nate told him. "I need you in position at Overwatch Alpha within the hour." Cole allowed himself a small smile. "Been waiting a long time for this, Captain." "We all have." "Don't miss." "I never miss, sir." As Cole and Amy left to prepare their equipment, Nate called in his other team leaders. Master Sergeant Pete Granger was the demolitions expert. He had spent the last 18 months turning the approach corridor into a death trap. Every rock, every ice formation, every shadow hid something deadly. Staff Sergeant Louis Vega led Bravo Team, the close quarters combat specialists. His people could clear a room faster than anyone in the military. Tech Sergeant Dan Murphy was the brains of the operation, responsible for all the electronic warfare and countermeasures that would even the playing field against alien technology. And then there was Specialist Kim Reese, the youngest member of Spectre Company at 24 years old. She controlled the drone swarms and automated defense systems. Her fingers could dance across a console faster than anyone Nate had ever seen. They gathered around the tactical display as the alien fleet grew closer. 12 ships, Grace reported. The big one is staying in orbit. The others are moving into landing positions. How many troops? Nate asked. Then Murphy worked his console. Based on the ship sizes, I estimate between 150 and 250 ground forces. Pete Granger laughed quietly. That's it? They're sending 200 soldiers against us. They think we're scientists, Grace said. They think this will be easy. Nate studied the display for a long moment. Then he looked at his team, at these men and women who had followed him in the helm more times than he could count. Let them think that, he said. Let them land. Let them get comfortable. And then we show them what happens when you attack Earth. The team dispersed to their positions. Cole Bishop climbed to his hidden nest 3 kilometers from the base, where he had a perfect view of the landing zone. Pete Granger ran final checks on his explosives. Louis Vega gathered his team in the service tunnels, and Captain Nate Holloway stood alone at the observation window, watching the first alien dropships break through the clouds. They had no idea what they were walking into. The Veth Dominion had conquered 17 star systems without meeting any real resistance. They believed they were the greatest warriors in the galaxy. They believed humans were weak and primitive. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The Veth dropships came down through the thin atmosphere like metal monsters falling from the sky. Their engines roared against the howling wind, melting the ice beneath them as they touched down 3 kilometers from sight. Theta-7. Sub-Commander Kreth was the first to step onto the frozen ground. He stood 7 feet tall, his body covered in the natural exoskeleton that made his species so deadly in combat. His 4 eyes scanned the barren landscape as his troops formed up behind him. 200 shock troopers, each one a veteran of multiple campaigns. They carried plasma rifles that could melt through steel. They wore armor that could stop most projectile weapons. They had crushed entire civilizations with less firepower than this. Kreth looked toward the distant human base. It was a collection of small buildings, barely visible through the swirling ice crystals in the air. No defensive walls. No weapon emplacements. No signs of military activity at all. Pathetic, he said to his lieutenant. These humans have made no preparations for war. They will surrender the moment they see us. Should we demand their surrender first, Sub-Commander? Kreth considered this for a moment. The rules of the Dominion said he should give the enemy a chance to submit peacefully. But where was the glory in that? His warriors wanted blood. They wanted to prove themselves against these new creatures called humans. No, Kreth decided. We attack. Kill anyone who resists. Capture the rest for interrogation. The Veth began their march toward Site Theta-7. They moved in perfect formation, disciplined and confident. Their heavy footsteps crunched through the ice as they advanced across the frozen plain. 3 kilometers away, Sergeant Cole Bishop watched them through his rifle scope. He lay perfectly still in his hidden position, his body wrapped in thermal camouflage that made him invisible to sensors. Corporal Amy Dawson lay beside him, scanning the enemy with her own equipment. 204 contacts, Amy whispered. They're moving in standard assault formation. The big one in front must be the commander. Cole adjusted his aim slightly. The wind was blowing at 12 kilometers per hour from the east. The temperature was minus 87 degrees. The thin atmosphere would affect the bullet's trajectory over this distance. He had already calculated all of this. He had been calculating it for 18 months. Spectre 1, this is Overwatch Alpha, Cole said into his radio. Enemy is advancing. Requesting permission to engage. Captain Nate Holloway's voice came back calm and steady. Wait for my signal, Overwatch. Let them get comfortable first. Cole kept his eye on the scope. His finger rested gently on the trigger. His heart rate stayed at 60 beats per minute. He had done this hundreds of times before. The Veth continued their march, completely unaware that death was watching them. Back at the base, Nate monitored the enemy's progress on the tactical display. Grace stood beside him, coordinating with the different teams. Alpha Team is in position in the service tunnels, she reported. Bravo Team is ready at the south barrier. All automated defenses are online and waiting. What about Murphy's toys? Grace allowed herself a small smile. Dan says the electromagnetic barriers are charged and ready. He's almost disappointed he spent 2 years building them if the aliens go down this easy. Nate shook his head. They won't go down easy. These are professional soldiers. Once they recover from the initial surprise, they'll fight hard, but they'll still lose. Yes, they'll still lose. The Veth reached the 1 kilometer mark. They had spread out slightly, their formation becoming more loose as they grew confident that no resistance was coming. Some of the younger warriors were laughing, joking about how easy this conquest would be. Subcommander Kreth raised his hand, signaling his troops to pause. Something felt wrong. The human base was too quiet. There should have been some reaction by now. Frightened scientists running around, trying to hide. Desperate radio calls for help. Something. Instead, there was only silence. Sir, one of his officers said, I am detecting some unusual energy readings from the surrounding terrain. Kreth's mandibles clicked with irritation. What kind of readings? Unknown, sir. They are very faint. Possibly natural geological activity. Before Kreth could respond, Captain Nate Holloway's voice echoed across the frozen plain. The humans had somehow tapped into the Veth communication frequency. Attention, Veth forces. This is Captain Nathan Holloway of the United Earth Special Operations Command. You have entered human sovereign territory with hostile intent. This is your only warning. Leave now or face the consequences. Kreth laughed, a harsh clicking sound that his troops echoed. Human, you are 32 scientists against 200 warriors. You have no hope of victory. Surrender now, and I will make your deaths quick. There was a pause. Then Nate's voice came again, quieter this time. I was hoping you would say that. The next words came through Cole Bishop's earpiece. Overwatch Alpha. You are cleared to engage. Cole exhaled slowly. His fingers squeezed the trigger. The specially designed round left the barrel at 3 times the speed of sound. It traveled 2.3 kilometers through the thin atmosphere in less than 2 seconds. It struck Subcommander Kreth directly through his primary sensory cluster. The one spot on a Veth body not protected by natural armor. The Subcommander was dead before his body hit the frozen ground. For a moment, absolute silence fell over the battlefield. 200 Veth warriors stared at their fallen commander, unable to process what had happened. No one had ever killed a subcommander so quickly, so easily. Then the world exploded. Peak Ranger's buried charges detonated in a precise sequence, sending pillars of ice and fire into the sky. Hidden turrets emerged from the ground and opened fire with concentrated bursts of armor-piercing rounds. Microdrones swarmed up from concealed launchers. each one carrying enough explosive to kill a Veth warrior. The aliens scattered, trying to find cover that did not exist. Every rock they hid behind exploded. Every position they tried to hold came under fire from multiple directions. And through it all, Cole Bishop kept firing. One shot, one kill. Again and again and again, the Veth had walked into a kill box designed by the deadliest soldiers humanity had ever produced. And the killing had only just begun. The death of Sub-Commander Kreth sent shockwaves through the Veth landing force. Their entire command structure was built on strict hierarchy. Every soldier waited for orders from above. Every decision required approval from a superior officer, and now their superior officer was dead, his body lying in the frozen dirt with a hole where his face used to be. For 37 seconds, 200 elite Veth warriors stood frozen in confusion. They had never faced a situation like this. They had never needed to think for themselves in combat. Those 37 seconds cost them everything. Specialist Kim Reese sat at her console inside Site Theta 7, her fingers flying across the controls. 3 holographic displays floated around her, each one showing a different part of the battlefield. She was 24 years old, the youngest member of Spectre Company, and she controlled more firepower than most naval destroyers. "Drone Swarm Alpha, Target Cluster 17, she said quietly. "Swarm Beta, move to intercept the group trying to flank east." The microdrones responded instantly, changing direction in mid-flight. Each drone was no bigger than a human fist, but they carried enough explosive to punch through Veth armor. They moved in coordinated patterns, surrounding enemy groups and detonating in precise sequences. Captain Nate Holloway watched the battle unfold on the main display. Red dots marked enemy positions. Blue dots marked his own people. And one by one, the red dots were disappearing. "Alpha Team, execute," he ordered. Lieutenant Grace Dunham led her team through the service tunnels that ran beneath the frozen surface. These tunnels had been dug over 18 months, a secret network that allowed Spectre Company to move unseen. They emerged from a hidden exit 200 meters behind the Veth formation. 8 soldiers against 200 aliens. Terrible odds for anyone else. For Alpha Team, it was almost unfair. Grace raised her fist, signaling her team to halt. She studied the enemy through her tactical visor. The Veth were finally starting to recover from their shock. A senior officer had taken command and was trying to organize a retreat to the dropships. Grace smiled grimly. That was not going to happen. "Open fire," she whispered. Alpha Team carried weapons specifically designed to penetrate Veth exoskeletons. The rounds exploded on impact, sending fragments deep into alien flesh. The rear guard of the Veth force went down before they even knew they were being attacked. Panic spread through the alien ranks. They were taking fire from multiple directions now. From the front, from behind, from above. The turrets that had risen from the ice never stopped shooting. The drones kept swarming. And somewhere out there, a human sniper was picking off anyone who tried to give orders. Cole Bishop had stopped counting his kills somewhere around 30. His rifle was a custom design, built specifically for this mission. It could fire special ammunition that could penetrate Veth armor at over 3 kilometers. His spotter, Amy Dawson, kept feeding him targets. "Officer, 40 degrees left, behind the ice formation." Cole shifted his aim and fired. The officer's head exploded. Another officer trying to rally troops near the southern dropship. Another shot. Another kill. Heavy weapons team setting up at, I see them. 3 shots in rapid succession. 3 Veth warriors fell dead. On the flagship Eternal Conquest, Fleet Admiral Vorath stared at the tactical display in disbelief. He had expected a quick, easy victory. Instead, he was watching his elite shock troopers being systematically slaughtered. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "They are 32 humans. Scientists. How are they destroying our warriors? His communications officer had no answer. No one on the bridge had an answer. Nothing in their experience had prepared them for this. Back on the surface, the battle had turned into a complete rout. The surviving Veth tried to retreat to their dropships, but Staff Sergeant Luis Vega and Bravo team were waiting for them. Luis was a large man with arms like tree trunks and a face that showed no mercy. His team specialized in close-quarters combat, the brutal work of killing enemies at arm's length. They had positioned themselves along the only path to the landing zone. Remember, Luis told his team, "They're bigger than us, but they're slow. Stay mobile. Hit hard. Don't let them grab you." The first Veth warrior came running toward them, desperate to reach the safety of the dropships. Luis stepped out from behind cover and fired 3 rounds into the alien's chest. The warrior stumbled, but kept coming. Luis dropped his rifle and drew his combat knife. In one smooth motion, he ducked under the alien's clumsy swing and drove the blade up through the soft spot beneath its jaw. The Veth collapsed, dead before it hit the ground. More aliens came. Bravo team met them with bullets and blades in bare hands. It was savage, brutal work, but these were savage, brutal men and women. They had trained for this their entire lives. Tech Sergeant Dan Murphy monitored the alien communications from his station inside the base. The Veth were panicking, shouting at each other in their clicking language. Their chain of command had completely collapsed. No one knew who was in charge. "Captain," Dan reported, "they're trying to signal the fleet for emergency extraction." Nate nodded. "Let them. I want the Admiral to see exactly what's happening to his soldiers." The battle lasted 2 more hours. By the end, 163 Veth warriors lay dead on the frozen plain. The survivors huddled in small groups, surrounded by Spectre Company soldiers, waiting for death that did not come. Not one member of Spectre Company had been killed. Not one had even been seriously wounded. Captain Nate Holloway walked among the alien prisoners, his boots crunching through ice stained with purple Veth blood. He looked at these creatures who had thought themselves the greatest warriors in the galaxy. They did not look so great now. "Grace," he called, "get me a communication line to the flagship. I think it's time I had a conversation with their admiral." The real battle was about to begin. Fleet Admiral Vorath stood on the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, his 4 eyes fixed on the tactical display that told a story he refused to believe. 163 of his finest warriors were dead. 37 more were prisoners. The rest had managed to retreat to the dropships, but they were wounded, broken, and utterly defeated. By 32 humans. The bridge crew moved around him in terrified silence. No one wanted to be the one to speak first. No one wanted to draw the Admiral's attention. His rage was legendary, and right now, that rage was barely contained. "Admiral," the communications officer said hesitantly, "we are receiving a transmission from the surface. The humans wish to speak with you." Vorath's mandibles clicked together sharply. "Put them through." The holographic display flickered, and a human face appeared. The creature was covered in dirt and what looked like purple Veth blood. His hair was disheveled, and there was a cut on his forehead. But his eyes were calm, steady, almost amused. "This is Captain Nathan Holloway of the United Earth Special Operations Command," the human said. "You must be the Admiral." Vorath drew himself up to his full height. "I am Fleet Admiral Vorath, Supreme Commander of the Veth Dominion's 3rd Expansion Fleet. You have committed an act of war against the Dominion. Your actions will bring destruction upon your entire species." The human did not react with fear. He did not beg for mercy. Instead, he smiled, and there was something cold and dangerous in that smile. "Admiral, let me explain something to you. You attacked sovereign human territory without provocation. You brought 200 soldiers to conquer what you believed was a defenseless research station. And in the past 3 hours, I have killed 163 of them. Voreth's claws dug into the armrest of his command chair. You caught us by surprise. It will not happen again. I have 10,000 more warriors on this fleet. I will send them all if necessary. Please do, Nate said. I could use the practice. For a moment, Voreth was too shocked to respond. No species had ever spoken to the Dominion with such disrespect. Every other civilization they had encountered had trembled before their might, had begged for mercy, had surrendered rather than face the Veth war machine. But this human, this insignificant creature from a primitive world, was mocking him. You are insane, Voreth said. You are 32 soldiers against an empire that spans 17 star systems. You cannot possibly win. Nate leaned closer to the camera. His smile faded, replaced by an expression of deadly seriousness. Admiral, I want you to understand something. This outpost was not placed here by accident. We knew you were coming. We have known for 18 months. Every moment of this battle went exactly as we planned. Behind Nate, Lieutenant Grace Dunham appeared. She was carrying a small device that Voreth's instruments immediately recognized, a short-range teleportation beacon. It was technology that even the Veth had not fully mastered. You see, Nate continued, humanity does not send its elite soldiers to remote moons as punishment. We send them here because this is where the enemy will come. This is where we want to meet you. This is where we have prepared our welcome. Voreth felt something he had not experienced in over a century of warfare. He felt uncertain. He felt, perhaps, a tiny touch of fear. What do you want, human? I want you to leave. Take your ships, take your surviving soldiers, and go back to your dominion. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that Earth is not a weak, primitive world waiting to be conquered. Tell them that when you attack humans, humans fight back. The Admiral's pride would not allow him to accept such terms. He was Veth. He had never retreated from a battle in his life. He would not start now. And if I refuse, if I send my entire army to crush your little outpost? Nate's expression did not change. Then I will board your flagship and personally remove your head from your shoulders. Impossible. You have no ships. You have no means of reaching us in orbit. Nate held up the teleportation beacon that Grace had given him. Admiral, in approximately 30 seconds, this device will lock onto your bridge. It can transport 5 people across a distance of 50,000 kilometers. That is more than enough to reach your position. Voreth's blood ran cold. He looked at his tactical officer. Can they do that? The officer checked his instruments, his movements frantic. Sir, I am detecting a massive energy buildup on the surface. It is consistent with teleportation technology. They are not bluffing. You have 10 seconds to begin your withdrawal, Nate said. After that, I am coming for you personally. The Admiral looked around his bridge at his officers, his crew, his warriors. They were all watching him, waiting for his decision. For the first time in his long career, he had no idea what to do. The human had defeated his landing force with ease. The human had technology that the Veth could not match. And the human showed no fear at all. 5 seconds, Admiral. Voreth made his decision. It was the hardest decision of his life, but he made it. Navigation. Plot a course back to Dominion space. All ships, prepare for immediate withdrawal. His officers stared at him in disbelief. Admiral, we cannot just retreat. The Dominion has never faced an enemy like this, Voreth interrupted. We are leaving, now. On the surface of the frozen moon, Captain Nate Holloway watched the alien fleet begin to turn away. He lowered the teleportation beacon and allowed himself a small sigh of relief. Would it actually have worked? Grace asked quietly. The beacon, I mean. Could we really have teleported to their ship? Nate shrugged. Maybe. Dan said it had about a 40% chance of success. And the other 60%? We would have materialized inside a wall or in the vacuum of space. Grace stared at him. You were bluffing. I was playing the odds. And the odds said that an admiral who just lost most of his landing force was not in the mood to call my bluff. The fleet continued its withdrawal. Ship after ship engaged their engines and disappeared into the darkness of space. Within an hour, the system was empty. Spectre Company had won, but Nate knew this was only the beginning. The Veth fleet did not get far. 12 hours after beginning their withdrawal, Admiral Vorath received new orders from the Dominion High Command. They had been monitoring the battle through long-range sensors. They had seen everything, and they were not pleased. Vorath was commanded to return to the human system and finish what he had started. Failure was not acceptable. Retreat was not acceptable. He was to destroy the human outpost and every creature inside it, or he was not to return at all. The Admiral obeyed. He had no choice. The punishment for disobeying the High Command was death, and not a quick death. He turned his fleet around and headed back toward the frozen moon. But this time, things were different. Captain Nate Holloway had not been idle during those 12 hours. The moment the Veth fleet had left the system, he had sent a coded transmission to Earth Command. Reinforcements were already on their way. More importantly, he had received authorization to use the asset that Earth had kept secret from the rest of the galaxy. The teleportation beacon was not a bluff after all. It was real, fully functional, and far more powerful than he had let the Admiral believe. When the Veth fleet returned to the system, they found the same small outpost waiting for them. The same frozen moon. The same 32 humans. Nothing had changed. Vorath ordered a full assault. Every soldier on every ship was to land. Every weapon was to be brought to bear. There would be no mistakes this time. The dropships launched. Thousands of Veth warriors descended toward the surface. It was the largest landing force the Dominion had ever deployed against a single target. They never made it as the first dropships entered the atmosphere. The teleportation beacon activated. But it did not transport Nate Holloway to the Admiral's bridge. Instead, it transported a nuclear device directly into the center of the Veth formation. The explosion was visible from orbit. A massive fireball consumed dozens of dropships in an instant. The electromagnetic pulse disabled hundreds more. The carefully organized assault became a chaotic mess of falling debris and dying warriors. And then Spectre Company struck again. This time, they did not stay on the defensive. Nate led a strike team personally, using the teleportation technology to appear aboard the Eternal Conquest itself. 5 humans against a crew of 3,000. It should have been suicide. It would have been suicide for anyone else. But these were not ordinary soldiers. These were the deadliest warriors humanity had ever produced. Nate and his team materialized on the bridge. Weapons already firing. The Veth security guards went down before they could even raise their rifles. Officers fled in panic. Crew members screamed in their clicking language, unable to understand how the humans had appeared out of nowhere. Admiral Vorath stood his ground. He was old and past his prime, but he was still a warrior. He drew his ceremonial blade and faced the human captain. "You are brave," Vorath admitted. "Foolish, but brave. You cannot defeat me in single combat. I have been fighting for longer than your species has existed." Nate holstered his weapon and drew his own knife. It was a simple thing, just steel and carbon fiber. Nothing compared to the Admiral's ornate blade. "Let us find out," he said. The fight lasted 4 minutes. Vorath was strong, experienced, and skilled. His blade moved in patterns perfected over centuries of warfare. Any normal human would have been cut to pieces in seconds. But Nate was not a normal human. He had spent his entire adult life learning how to kill creatures bigger, stronger and more dangerous than himself. He had studied the Veth fighting style from captured recordings. He had practiced against holographic simulations until he knew every move, every weakness, every vulnerability. When the fight ended, Admiral Varath lay dead on the deck of his own bridge, Nate's knife buried in his throat. The crew of the Eternal Conquest surrendered immediately. 3 weeks later, the new admiral of the Third Expansion Fleet stood before the United Earth Council, formally surrendering on behalf of the Veth Dominion. The terms were harsh but fair: complete withdrawal from human-controlled space, reparations for the unprovoked attack, and full disclosure of all Dominion military capabilities. The Veth Empire, which had conquered 17 star systems without defeat, had been brought to its knees by 32 humans on a frozen moon. Spectre Company received no public recognition. Their names appeared in no news feeds. Their faces were shown on no monuments. The Battle of Site Theta 7 was classified at the highest levels, known only to a handful of senior officials. But across the galaxy, whispers began to spread. The Koresh Collective had been planning an incursion into human space. They quietly canceled their plans. The Yundari swarm, whose migration path would have taken them through human territory, changed their course by 200 light years. The Malari Trade Federation, who had been considering whether to deal with humans through diplomacy or conquest, suddenly became very interested in establishing peaceful trade relations. No one knew exactly what had happened on that frozen moon. The details were vague, contradictory, wrapped in rumor and legend. But everyone knew the important part. The Veth Dominion had attacked the human outpost and had been utterly destroyed. The humans were not prey. They were predators. Captain Nate Holloway returned to Site Theta 7 with his team. The base was being expanded now, more equipment and personnel arriving every month. But the core of Spectre Company remained the same: 32 men and women who had proven that humanity would not go quietly into the darkness. Nate stood at the observation window, watching the endless ice storm sweep across the barren landscape. Grace Dunham approached with 2 cups of coffee, a small luxury they allowed themselves after a successful mission. "The brass wants to assign us somewhere else," she said, handing him a cup. "Somewhere more comfortable. They think we have earned a rest." Nate took the coffee but shook his head. "What did you tell them?" "I told them we're staying right here. This is our post. This is where we belong." Nate nodded slowly. Out there, among the stars, other eyes were turning toward Earth. Some were curious. Some were cautious. And some, despite everything, were still thinking about conquest. Let them come. Spectre Company would be waiting. "You think they will try again?" Grace asked. "The Veth or someone else?" Nate looked out at the frozen wasteland, at the spot where 163 alien warriors had died, learning the true price of invading human territory. "Somebody always tries," he said. "That is why we are here. That is why we will always be here." Grace stood beside him in comfortable silence. Outside, the ice storms raged on, cold and indifferent to the affairs of mortals. But somewhere in the vast darkness of space, civilizations that had never feared anything in their long histories looked toward a small blue planet called Earth. And for the first time, they were afraid. The humans were watching. The humans were waiting, and the humans would never surrender.